like I did mention, my name is Matthew Ansa. People talk about new cities, master plan communities, and the question is, what really are these? What distinguishes a master plan city from other developments? What are the important things to know? What is there for us? Those of us who are interested in real estate, urban development. I mean, if you're interested in building a house or owning a home, living living and working in a community, what are the key considerations to look at? If you have a critical role to play in, let's say, the Ministry of Works and Housing, what are some of the important things to know in urban development and master planning of our cities? These are all important things that we need to know. So this webinar is aimed at shedding light on master plan cities. And our speaker is very, very experienced in this field. He has over 10 years experience in the utility industry. He previously worked with the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, as we all know it, as a project engineer in the Engineering and Network Projects Directorate. And then he also served as a member of the project coordination unit of several major infrastructure projects throughout the country, including the Nkrumah Circle interchange, the Kaswa interchange, the dualization of the Togbe-Afede Highway, among other key projects. He has a Belgian profile. And he holds a BSc in electrical engineering from the KNUST and is a corporate member of the Ghana Institute of Engineers. I'll cut it short. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest for this morning is Adamu Ben Mahmood. He is in charge of utilities and urban infrastructure at Appolonia City. Well, let's welcome Ben Mahmood.
I was waiting for you to conclude that by saying with a round of applause. As though we are going to be able to hear the rest of them clap. So it's an honor to be with you today. I feel really privileged to be given the opportunity to speak with all of you. This session promises to be an interactive one. I am here not to necessarily only impact knowledge, but to lead discussions on something that is very important, for the country as a developing economy. And I think that, all of us here in Appolonia think that it is a conversation that we must have so that the authorities, and those in the powers that be would hear us and try to give us better communities to live in. And so it's an honor. Again, it's an honor because the last webinar was facilitated by Amake Abebrese, an award-winning actress. And so I have quite big shoes to fill today, and I hope that I am able to hold myself worthy, throughout this presentation. We have prepared some slides which will lead the discussion, and so I would be starting the presentation now. And as time goes on, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to drop your questions in the chat session. My colleague Matthew will prompt you when there are some questions to be answered, and I will do my very best to answer them to the best of my ability. So why this conversation? I think this conversation has been necessitated by the fact that, we find ourselves in Africa, and as a continent, we've had major issues, with, master planning our communities and trying to control the development, and how cities and major towns have grown. It is a popular saying also that it is common knowledge that real estate is one of the safest investments you can make after you have worked hard to make yourself a little money. However, this investment can be, foiled by factors that you do not necessarily have direct control over. The example being, you can put up a very nice mansion. For those of you who are familiar with Accra, in a place like Nima, and the value of that property will not be the same or equal to a similar structure that has been put up in the likes of East Legon and Airport residential area. And so the location for making real estate investments is very paramount to the decision to even invest in real estate. And so that is why we think that the conversation is important. We need to we have to be very deliberate in thinking through and working towards the type of cities we want our future Ghanaians to live in, our children and those who come after us, so that posterity will look kindly upon us and what we have done for our dear nation, Ghana. But now, so what is the current situation of our cities that we live in? Statistics show that there has been a rapid, uncontrolled urbanization with an average 3.5% growth rate in urban population between 2002 and 2018 in the major cities of Ghana. And these major cities I refer to would include the likes of Accra, Tamar, Kumasi, and secondly, Takoradi. Those are the 5 major cities in our country, Ghana. And these cities are typically characterized by high degrees of sanitation problems, congestion, and poor waste management practices, which has led to years of accumulated waste in our drainage systems. There is also population pressure for direct access to utility services, such as electricity and water supply. And Ghana's rapid urbanization has been accompanied by unplanned spatial expansion of metropolitan areas, which has limited infrastructure connectivity. I'm sure we are all very used to the likes of new towns where existing communities, because they have become too congested, have had satellite developments shooting around its borders, which is then supposed to feed the main town with workforce and livelihoods. And people who work in these cities can then live in those adjoining towns. However, the problem is with these things is that it has had very poor or limited connectivity to infrastructure to make life meaningful in those parts of the cities. And so as a result of this, we have quite a lot of unplanned areas within our country and within our major cities, as I earlier mentioned. I'm sure that a lot of us have our own experiences with the kinds of places we live currently. And so you may, in the chat section, drop a few of your experiences or observations with, some of the negative experiences you've had in living in unplanned areas. But what comes to my mind immediately when I started putting up my slides together is the dangers posed by improper location of industrial facilities, which sometimes lead to the loss of human lives. May I draw your mind to the event of barely 3 years ago when the gas filling station at Atomic Junction exploded, which led to some 7 people losing their lives and 132 other people suffered permanent injuries to their bodies. Uncontrollable spread of infections due to congestion and perennial flooding. This also is exacerbated now that we have on our hands the dreaded COVID-19 virus, which is ravaging the world and many places. And clearly the statistics of this disease shows that the rate of infection and spread is higher in densely populated communities where we have congestion. And even in Accra, when you look at the hotspots for the disease in Accra, you will find that places such as Ayawaso West, where Nima is the capital, is one of the hotspots for the spread of COVID-19 in our country. There's also the problem of undersized and overloaded amenities and social infrastructure and its associated inconveniences. And so communities that were planned for, say, 300 households would now situate close to 1,000 or 3 times the number that it is originally planned for. And so you would have problems with your utility infrastructure where power and water will be unreliable because of the overloaded equipment that have been installed. If you are lucky to have it at all, it would only power your lights and power gadgets during the evening when everybody is at home. A developing country as ours, unfortunately, has its peak periods for power demand in the evenings when people have come home. And so if you live in congested areas, that is when you have problems with power fluctuation and voltage irregularities. Because truth be told, these things were done for lower densities, and as a result of a lack of planning, we have more numbers relying on the same small-sized equipment to provide them the services that we so desperately need to make our lives meaningful. There's also the problem of devaluation of your real estate investments, because like I said, you may put up the nicest of buildings, but if your neighborhood is not a good one, it will devalue your property. You may put up the White House in Nima, for example. And my apologies to anybody who may live in Nima. I seem to be picking on Nima too often. But if you live in places like Nima or even Ashaman, and you put up the White House or a building that can be compared to the White House, you will not get the expected returns on investment on such a magnificent edifice because of factors that are not, under your direct control, only because your neighborhood is not nice, the roads leading to the property is not good, you have fields spread around the neighborhood. And that would mean that the true and actual value of your real estate investment will not be actualized. Right. So with that said, what then do we mean by a master plan community? So that when we are making a choice of where to do real estate investments, we are better informed with what, where the locations we select. So a master plan community is also known as a planned community or a planned city or town. And it is a community that was carefully planned from its inception. And it's typically constructed on previously undeveloped land. And so, for example, in the 1950s, when our first president, Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, chose to develop the harbor city, Tamar, as it is popularly known, it was a bare land, and he employed architects to put together a plan for his city. And so if you look around the country, you'd see that Tamar is one of the few communities which was constructed according to some sort of plan. And we'll discuss later in this presentation how Tamar has not actualized its potential and what went wrong and what we seek to correct within Appolonia City. Let me also point out here that even though a key component of a master plan city is that it has to be started on a hitherto undeveloped land, there are instances where city regeneration projects have taken place. And what we mean by city regeneration projects are: one, you could have existing settlements, have these buildings that are in those communities broken down and reconstructed to meet the modern specifications. Case in point is if you drive along the Oxford Street and in the Osu neighborhood as a whole, we will see that some of the old structures are being pulled down with newer ones coming up. It is our hope that those ones are being done according to a certain plan, so that when Osu is regenerated, we would have a master plan community in Osu. Another way by which city regeneration projects occur is when new towns develop out of existing communities. And so, for example, if you look at Achimota, when Achimota got congested, we then started the development of what we refer to as new Achimota. What other countries would have done in the case of new cities springing out of old congested ones would be to improve upon the plan of the existing community and try to implement a better master plan agenda in the new communities. However, unfortunately, in our part of the world, new communities have only meant that the original landowners, who are the chiefs and the family heads, have run out of land in the main cities and are selling in a very haphazard and ad hoc manner in these new towns. And so for them, it is an additional revenue source and not necessarily an opportunity to improve on the communities they first developed. Master planning includes a master plan city would include, planning guidelines, policies for life and urban management, because it is an important aspect of master planning or living in a community that is master planned. You must have some urban services and urban infrastructure management. Master plan communities also takes into consideration space requirements and development plans for all the various socio-economic activities that are expected to happen within a community, including housing, transportation, community facilities, and so on and so forth. And those things are supposed to support human life in these communities. And so from the very onset, it is clear that a master plan community would not have only one particular land use type. It would have several land uses for all these other community facilities, which are supposed to support human life and make life, the quality of life in these communities more meaningful. And so then one may ask, what is a master plan? A master plan in simple terms is a plan of a city which is supposed to be an evolving long-term perspective plan document which acts as a guide to the sustainable and planned development of a city. Let me take that again slowly. Master plan of a city is an evolving long-term perspective plan document which acts as a guide to the sustainable and planned development of a city. And so no master plan is ever cast in stone. However, what must always be at the back of our minds is the dream you want to achieve in your city. Master plans will continue to evolve as the community rolls out. They are long-term, and so the fact that they are long-term means that it should have a plan for before the community is built up. There should be a plan for during the construction of the community, and there should be a plan for maintenance and management of the city after construction activities have come to an end. And so it is a multidisciplinary activity. You need engineers, you need architects, you need land surveyors, you need land economists, and all disciplines, a lot of disciplines, to put together a comprehensive master plan for a community. Now, so what are some of the benefits of a master plan community, if I may ask? Of course, we have mentioned that social and community facilities would bring about an improvement in the quality of life, so that if in the middle of the night, for example, you need to go to a drugstore to get a medication for a stomach upset, you do not necessarily have to drive kilometers on end just to get very basic, drugs for yourself. And so master plan communities bring about an improvement in the quality of life. It brings about protection of lives and property. When we spoke about the negative experiences we may have had in living in unplanned communities, one of the things that featured prominently is the perennial floods we experience in Accra as a city. If for nothing at all, the effects of floods come up all the time on the 3rd of June, when we remember the filling station explosion at Kwame Nkrumah Circle, which took lives well over 100 people in our community and injured several others. And then the irreparable damage it does to properties and the psyche of the people who live in the neighborhood. And so master plan communities bring about protection of lives and property. And then your investment you may have made. Properly sized and cited social amenities such as schools and hospitals. I've alluded to that already earlier on this slide. It also brings about accurately sized social infrastructure such as roads and utility infrastructure. And so, for example, if a transformer is placed in a community and it is expected to serve 350 households, you know that transformer over the next 20 or so years is going to serve only 350 households. And it is unlikely that there would be a situation where that small size transformer is serving more than the 350, which it's originally intended to do. Again, in sizing pipes and conductors and transformers and infrastructure in any community, one of the things that is taken into consideration is the number of people it is supposed to serve. And so roads will be sized according to the number of vehicles that are expected to ply that road. And so when we have traffic in our community, it is only because these roads that are made for a certain number of vehicles is now being plied by 3 times the number that it was originally designed for. And living in a master plan community or investing within a master plan community would give you guaranteed returns on investment on all your real estate investments you have made in the community. On the average, real estate is supposed to appreciate between some 5 to 10% year on year, but that is largely dependent on the community within which you find such an investment. And so it is. I think I hope that I have been able to show through these slides that I've gone past the importance of living in a master planned community and why it is necessary and vital for our city authorities to pay more attention to planning cities and sticking to those plans as much as possible. Now, we will delve into Appolonia City specifically, and we'll try to, for the rest of the presentation, address why we think Appolonia City is a model master plan community and why we think Appolonia City is the right place for you to make a real estate investment. Apolonia City is a master plan because there is an existing master plan which is being implemented to the letter. The master plan was developed by a firm known as SOM, which is based in the UK. To place a little more emphasis on SOM and their clouds in the master planning industry or sphere. SOM were the guys who designed the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world, and it's currently situated in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. And so that's the kind of brain power that put together the Appolonia City master plan. Appolonia City is also a master plan city because the plan is for a long-term plan, and it is supposed to be rolled out over a 30-year period. However, the plan is such that it can phase out the development so that the infrastructure rollout is first and foremost done where it is needed the most. And so when we go into the Appolonia City master plan itself proper, I will show you, or we'll speak about the different phases of the Appolonia City master plan and how we are rolling out the dream in phases. Appolonia City is also master plan because we have rolled out state-of-the-art infrastructure, which has been carefully designed based on the master plans that we have and the population estimates that has been derived out for the city. And so, you know, that infrastructure is being rolled out in phases as the community develops and as the master plan is actualized. There are also strong development controls within Appolonia City, and those who are existing clients of Appolonia would attest to the fact that even before you have your building permit approved by the local authority, a first and important step is to have your building designs vetted by a local development control committee to ensure that all the development control guidelines we have put in place for the city is being obeyed in your drawing and in your own, you know, project details, so that we are able to maintain some sort of uniformity, put properties of equal value in certain enclaves, so that we do not have what we would call slums developing next to high-end residential areas. And I mean, of course, we all know that we cannot do an utopia for rich men only. One of the key aspects of master planning is the fact that your community should be able to cater for all the income groups of the people that may live in the city. And so Appolonia City has that segregation for high-end, middle-income, and low-income housing for all the different income groups that exist. I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this presentation that Tamar is one of the few master plan communities in Ghana. And so we'll try to draw some parallels between Appolonia City and Tamar as we know it. Tamar was established in 1952 by our very first Prime Minister, Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, God rest his soul. Appolonia City, on the other hand, was started in 2011 with the acquisition of some 2,325 acres of land. Tamar, on the other hand, is in total some almost 5,000 acres of land. When you consider Tamar proper, that is communities 1 to 12. In the recent past, we've had other communities developing and springing up around Tamar. If my memory serves me right, I think to date we have as many as 25 communities, with Tamar 25 being situated along the Aflawo Road. Tamar is being developed by a state-owned enterprise, which is known as the Tamar Development Corporation. Appolonia City, however, is privately owned, and it's being developed by a group of companies known as Rendeva. And when we go into Appolonia specifically, we will speak more about Rendeva and what Rendeva stands for. At present, Tamar has a population of some 220,000 people, and it is expected that by 2030, the population of Tamar would have gone up to some 300,000. However, in Appolonia, current population is 200 people. It is estimated that upon completion in 2030, we would have an approximated 90,000 inhabitants within Appolonia. This does not consider the day visitors who would come and leave Appolonia. Tamar, on the other hand, it's under the Tamar Metropolitan Assembly, and Appolonia City is under the Pong Katamansu Municipal Authority. Now, let me tell you a little about Appolonia, and from here onwards, we would be speaking specifically about Appolonia, and all the things we'll be saying will be specific to Appolonia, just in case I forget to mention them. Apollonia, as I have said already, is some 2,325 acres, almost 1,000 hectares of inclusive mixed-use land. And I'll explain to you what I mean by mixed-use land. The plan is to develop a seamless live, work, and play community within Appolonia City. And for that reason, Appolonia City offers homes, offices, shopping malls, schools, healthcare, and ample parks and open spaces. High-quality tarred roads, power, ICT, water and storm drain infrastructure are already available in Appolonia. The development, like I mentioned earlier, is being undertaken by a firm known as Rendeva. Rendeva is Africa's largest new city developer with over 30,000 acres of land across 5 sub-Saharan African countries, specifically Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, and DRC. In Ghana, there are 2 cities being developed by Rendeva: Appolonia City, which is now started and is being developed, and then there is King City, which is located in the western region of Ghana. That city is undergoing master planning stages now, and so construction has not started in King City. In Nigeria, there is a development in Lagos known as Alaru City, which is also being developed by Rendeva, and there's a second one in Abuja, which is known as Jigna. In Kenya, where the very first large-scale development of this kind started in Nairobi, we have Tatu City, which is also some 5,000 acres of land that is being developed by Rendeva in Nairobi. And then in DRC, we have what we call Kisubishi. Kisubishi is also in the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and that is the last of the 7 sister city developments that was started by Rendeva. And so for Appolonia specifically, the Appolonia City is a partnership between Rendeva and the chiefs and elders and residents of Appolonia community. A lot of people do not get this right. It is important to emphasize that Appolonia as a community pre-existed before Appolonia City came in. The city Appolonia was named after the existing community, and that is why it is known as Appolonia City, to re-emphasize the fact that the city development is a partnership between Rendeva and the chiefs, elders, and resident people of Appolonia community. And so there's a difference. There's the Appolonia community, and then there's the Appolonia City development, which is being done by Rendeva. And so somebody may own land in Appolonia, but not necessarily be situated within the confines of the Appolonia City development. Upon completion in some 20 years to come, we expect to have within Appolonia some 25,000 housing units and 100,000 residents, like I earlier alluded to. A 200-acre modern light industrial park, 100 acres of central business districts, because we are trying to pull. If you look at how Accra has developed, the central business district when I was growing up, and I don't have a very long lifespan to date, and so when I was growing up, the central business districts for Accra was Makola and the High Street proper, and that is where the CBD was for Accra. However, in recent times, we have noticed that the CBD has migrated from Accra Central, and now the airport commercial area can be referred to as the new CBD of Accra. Studies show that the CBD will now move from Airport Residential Area and go eastwards towards East Legon, towards Adenta, and towards Ivry. And for that reason, Appolonia has been situated along that growth path of Accra. And so we have dedicated some 100 acres of land to a central business district. And importantly, some 300 acres of public parks and gardens. I think this cannot be overemphasized. The importance of parks and gardens in our communities cannot be overemphasized. It is this reason, it is the lack of these parks and gardens that has been a contributory factor to the perennial rain floods that we have in Accra, because the surface water does not have anywhere to run into, because all the waterways, all the parks and gardens have been built up and replaced with concrete. And so water is unable to seep into the ground, and they have to find their, as is popularly said, the water will find its level. And unfortunately, sometimes that level may mean your bedroom or your living room. And so the importance of parks and gardens cannot be overemphasized. And so Appolonia has dedicated some 300 acres of its lowest lying lands to green parks and public gardens. Right. So this map you can see on your screen will speak to the land use map for Appolonia City, or in other words, the master plan of Appolonia City. As you may see from your screen, the development has been phased out into 4 different phases, and we have currently started construction within phase 1 of the development. And so phase 1 will be the area that is to the left side of to the extreme left of your screen. And then phase 2 of the city 2 has also been master planned. However, we have not started rolling out development in phase 2 of the project. There is also phase 3 and phase 4, which lie fallow. There's also phase 3 and phase 4, which lie fallow in the master plan diagram that you see. May I remind you at this point that if you have any questions, please do well to drop them in the chat dialog box, and I will attend to them after the presentation or when the time is right. Matthew, can we do that after the presentation? Or whenever you find appropriate, just prompt me and I will stop and we would attend to whatever questions that come up.
Okay, I'll prompt you shortly, and we have quite a number of them, so we'll be doing more.
Okay, all right. Then let me just speak about the land use, and then we can go on to answer some questions. So now the different colors you see in the Appolonia master plan would speak to specific land use types. I mentioned just earlier, just in the previous slide, that we have dedicated some 300 acres of land, of our lowest lying lands, to green parks and gardens. And so that is what is depicted by the green spaces you find in the very many colors of our master plan. The different shades of brown will then speak to the different density classes of the residential areas. And so we have low density residential areas, we have medium density residential areas, and we have high density residential areas. And there are different developmental guidelines for all of these different residential areas. And we shall speak to them when we go into the master plan, when we go into the development controls for Appolonia City. Now the red spaces would then be the central business district, as I alluded to earlier on, that we had dedicated some 100 acres of land to a central development of a central business district. The purple would then represent the light industrial park, and there are some transactions that have been done in the industrial park. I think that when a lot of people hear Appolonia City, we are misled into thinking that Appolonia City is a purely residential area. It is not the case. There are residential areas within Appolonia City, and there's an industrial park also within Appolonia City. Within the residential areas, you will see the different shades of blue and green. Now, these different shades of blue will represent community or social lands. These are lands where individuals can situate local businesses like supermarkets, corner shops, and what have you. The social lands also can be used to develop schools. And so currently within Appolonia, we have a school under construction by a third party. And this school is known as Eastern Ridge International School. it is being developed by a third party, as I said. The social lands can also be used to build hospitals, churches, and places of worship. And so we have a transaction with KICC, Kingdom International Church, where they have done a transaction. Sorry? Oh, my apologies. Kingsway International Church, Matthew Ashimowolowo, where the church has done a transaction in Appolonia to put up a church. But these have been carefully situated around the residential enclaves so as not to serve or become an inconvenience to life within the residential enclaves. And then there's the larger green parks and gardens, as I have alluded to earlier. There's the potential of expanding our existing industrial park, depending on how transactions in the industrial sector go. We may extend the 200 acres that I mentioned earlier to another 200 acres, making a total of 400 acres. Now, let me allay your fears, if you have any, by the presence of the industrial park within Appolonia City. The industrial park, as you can see, has been separated completely from the residential areas. And so there's a transition from the industrial park to the residential area through the CBD, all right? And so that you will not have trucks and industrial waste hampering life within the residential areas. This has been carefully thought through to situate the industrial park very far removed from the residential enclave, so as not to negatively impact life within the residential areas. This has also been done so that we are better able to segregate infrastructure for industrial users and that for residential users. So power lines, infrastructure like power lines and water lines will not be intermingling between residential enclaves and industrial enclaves. And those of you who live near industries would allude to the fact that when power lines and water lines go through industrial areas before they come to you, they come with very, uncomfortable experiences when industries turn on their motors and so on. And so we are now able, because of the strategic placement of our industrial park, we are better able to separate our utility services from residential and industrial clients. And so we do not expect, we shall not have the inconveniences of putting residential and industrial areas next to each other. We would not, let me specifically, and let me re-emphasize here, that whatever piece of land you buy, the Development Control Committee will make sure that you put the land to the use for which it is master planned for. In other words, you cannot buy a residential land and put up a corner shop. What we have seen in Tamar, and one of the reasons why Tamar has not lived to its expectation, is the fact that too many people have put up kiosks and corner shops in front of their plots. And that has turned residential lands into now commercial lands. This is not going to be allowed within Appolonia City. If you need land for a corner shop or a local business, there is land for such a purpose. If you need land, residential lands will be kept solely residential. There will not be the case where industrial facilities are situated next to a residential property. And as you can see clearly from the master plan, there is a transition between the residential enclave and the industrial park through the central business district. And so there's a clear segregation of between the two land users. Matthew, if I may pause here, we may take some questions and carry on.
All right. Thank you, Ben. So let me go through some of the questions and comments that we have in here. Okay, so Stephen Anak says, interesting analysis. Kenneth Donko Shiaman says, what is an unplanned community? How do we distinguish an unplanned community from a planned community? Reference is made to unplanned and planned, but I didn't get the distinction. I don't know if you got that. So he says, he made reference to unplanned and planned, but he didn't get the distinction. So how does he distinguish an unplanned community from a planned community? Would you respond to that before I go to the next one?
Yes, please. Let me attempt to clarify that. Now, unplanned communities, unfortunately, is what we see around us when we drive through a city of Accra. Unplanned communities is where there isn't a clear distinction between residential properties and industrial properties. Unplanned communities is where you do not have any infrastructure or appropriately or accurately sized social infrastructure to support the population that lives within the community. And so if you look around us, and I live in the western part of Accra, so a lot of my examples will be coming from that part of town. Please pardon me. I grew up in Tantra Hill. Next to my house, where we lived in Tantra Hill, was a roofing sheets factory. And so every time when the roofing sheets in a factory put on their motors and their equipment, we had severe power fluctuations in our house. That is a clear example of an unplanned community. Let's take Kaswa, for example. Moving from Kaswa into Accra is hectic, only because Kaswa, the roads that were made to lead Kaswa are now supporting population densities that are higher than what the roads were originally made to support. Those are characteristics of unplanned communities: the absence of social amenities and social infrastructure to support life, the absence of community facilities like schools, hospitals, shops, and markets to support life. Those are characteristics of unplanned communities. Planned communities, on the other hand, would have accurately and appropriately sized social infrastructure and equipment to support life in those communities. Planned communities, again, would have different land use types, but they are carefully segregated so that the different land use types do not mingle with each other to create inconveniences for each other. And that is one of the characteristics of a planned city. So in a nutshell, those are some of the differences between planned and unplanned cities. Solim is muted. We can hear you. Okay. Matthew, I think you're muted too.
Yeah, I muted. I was just saying that I think I have an idea where you lived and grew up at Tantra Hill, because I know the roofing sheet company. Okay.
Right.
Kobina Apiache says, is Appolonia giving room for private building design types, or designs are prototypes?
Okay, so thank you very much for that question. Let me explain here that there are different offerings within Appolonia City. And I was going to speak to that at the latter stages of the presentation. And so, Matthew, I think it would be appropriate for us to defer this question to the latter stages when we speak about the offerings available in Appolonia City.
Fantastic. Another question from Kobina says, how can clients hold Appolonia City liable for the failure of the city FB? Interesting one. How can clients hold Appolonia City liable for the failure of the city FB?
So, Kobina, yeah. I have drawn linkages with our developer and tried to show this morning, the strong parentage Appolonia City has. And so it is most unlikely for the city development to fail. However, if it gives you any comfort, our sales and purchase agreement states clearly what our obligations to our clients are within specific timelines. And so if we renege on our promises, there is that legal document which can form the basis of whatever action a client may choose to take. But let me assure you that our strong parentage and the fact that our developers have a reputation in the international space should give you the comfort you require that we shall not fail in the rolling out of the city projects we have started.
Okay, great. Nana Fianco Cranton says, I think Tema lost its shine over time and to date. Tema today is not the Tema we used to know in the 80s and 90s, though I can guarantee that Appolonia City will never fall as Tema has. However, which better city, public or private, can you compare with Appolonia City?
Thank you very much, Nana Fianco, for the kind comments. One of the reasons why I think Tema failed was the lack of strong development control guidelines, and the fact that after land sales are done, the city developers abandon the project and hand over to the Tema Metropolitan Assembly. And as a result, the master plan, which was being implemented by the TDC has not been followed to the letter. And that is one of the reasons why Appolonia has very strong development control guidelines. Sometimes some clients tell us it's a pain in the neck, excuse my French, but it is for a reason. It is so that we are able to stick to our master plan and actualize the dreams that we have put together on paper.
Okay. All right. So just to add to that, I think that if you're looking at, because the latter part of his question said, which better city can you compare with Appolonia City? I think just like we mentioned, Tatu City in Kenya, one of our sister developments is a perfect example. Then of course the rest of sister cities, Alaro City in Nigeria. But outside of the Rendeva family, I can make reference to Century City in South Africa. I mean, they have a fully built city, very similar to what Appolonia City is doing. And it shows you like that whole complete live, work, play function that a city serves. We have, okay, so Patricia Adu says, yes, we need more trees. I think that was in reference to your comment on the conservation parks and trees.
Yes, yes.
Kwame Poku says, we have seen developers convert areas designated for parks and gardens to residential buildings. What assurance would Appolonia City give us that this will not happen here?
Right. Okay. So Kwame Poku, Appolonia Development Company, which is rolling out Appolonia City, is in the process of setting up a management company. Now, this management company would be made up of staff of Appolonia City and property owner associations. Now, the lands for public areas, parks and gardens and utility corridors will be vested in the control of the management company. And so even residents and landowners within Appolonia City would have a say as to how these public spaces are managed and utilized. And so that should give you the comfort that you require, that we shall stick to our master plan. Green areas will be kept as green areas. They will be vested in the management company, in the control of the management company. And residents and landowner associations of Appolonia City would have a seat on the management company. And so they would have a loud and clear say as to how these public spaces are managed.
Okay, great, thank you. Nana Cranting says, how do you mitigate the adverse effect of poor infrastructure in adjoining neighborhoods that lead to Appolonia City, which is better planned on its own? For instance, from Adenta Stretch to Appolonia City Junction, I know a lot of people who really like Appolonia, but complain of the struggle to access.
Yes, that is a very good question. Thank you, Nana Fianco. There's a limit to the control or the influence we have in the infrastructure in adjoining towns and neighborhoods. However, what we do as a company is to continually engage governments and stakeholders to, as a matter of urgency, improve the infrastructure that leads into Appolonia City. One of the key successes we have chugged in this area is the fact that we got the Adenta Dodowa stretch to be included in the budget for 2020. And the government has declared this year as a year of roads. We pray that they fulfill their promises in that regard. One of the roads that is earmarked for construction within this fiscal year is the Adenta to Dodowa highway, and that obviously is where you would branch off out or you be into Appolonia City. There is also a connection from Appolonia City through Tamar to the port, if that is your area of interest, or to Accra, the airport area, through the motorway, if that's your area of interest. That road too is under construction. In fact, there are many other alternatives. You could either go through Afienya, you could go through Ashaiman, and you could go through Mobole. So there are quite a number of alternatives, and those roads are being improved as we speak. We continue to engage government and the relevant stakeholders in improve the infrastructure that leads in and out of Appolonia City.
Okay, and another one from Kofi. Says, why do most cities with well-planned master plans appear so unplanned and unstructured over time? Why do most cities with well-planned master plans appear so unplanned and unstructured over time?
Okay, I would attempt to answer this question by saying that, number one, the lack of development controls for these communities is one of the major reasons. And so a lot of our lands are vested in chiefs and family heads. These people necessarily are not town planners. And so they sell land only to, for want of a better word, enrich themselves. What that has brought about is the fact that people will put up, after buying lands, they do not show any interest in what the people are doing on the lands that they have bought, and that is a major reason why a lot of our communities do not seem to be planned. There's also the problem with local authorities, and I do not like bashing them too much because they have a lot of work on their hands. However, they have the primary responsibility to ensuring that the local plans they have developed by themselves for the communities under their jurisdiction are implemented. And so even though chiefs may sell lands, they can control what the lands are used for in how they issue permits. We know also that a lot of people who do things that are not allowed within the communities do not seek the requisite statutory approvals before embarking upon their projects. And that is one of the reasons why you would find communities that do not seem structured and planned.
Okay, great. We'll take this one before you continue with your slide. This one from Kwamnoko Atin says, if I've quite understood your presentation, Appolonia City Master Plan will probably cover all forms of activities needed within a city. Do you have reserves for future government offices in your plan? That is to say, planning for any likely government decentralized offices?
Yes, Kwabna, thank you. I think you've got the picture quite clearly. Appolonia City would have all the activities a city should have. For government offices and the things you alluded to, yes, there are lands that are dedicated to state-controlled activities, such as a police station, such as a fire station, such as in fact, we have built an office. We are in negotiations with our local authority, KKMA, to take over. And so, yes, we have made provisions for such activities too within the city. Of course, these ones will not be sold to them. They would be taken upon ourselves as a CSR contribution.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ben. So I think you can proceed as we welcome new comments and questions, and then I'll share them with you once we have a number.
Very well. Thank you very much. Now, we spoke to some development controls that are enforced within Appolonia City, and the different structures that are allowed within all the different residential and land use types. And so some of the key things we take care of or some of the key considerations within the development control committee is the height restrictions and the land utilization ratios that we have for all developments across Appolonia City. I mentioned earlier that we had different densities for the residential enclaves. And so in areas that are designated for low density residential housing, you have a height restriction of 2 floors. That is a ground floor and a first floor. In medium density, enclaves, you would have height restrictions of 4 floors, ground floor, and 3 others on top, and so on and so forth. In our light industrial area, we allow industrial clients to go up as high as 4 floors. And the height restrictions are essential because Appolonia lies in the flight path for the major international airports, that is Kotoka International Airport. And so these heights have been settled on with consultation from the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. I also mentioned that there are land utilization ratios. One of the things, you may plan storm drainage infrastructure as big as you want. If you do not allow for storm water to get the opportunity to also seep into the soil, you would have too much water going into your storm drains, and that will contribute to flooding. And so one of the things we have done, as the whole community dedicates a ratio of its land to parks and gardens, we also ensure and encourage that private and people who have put up their buildings do so with a certain land utilization. And so in the residential areas, for example, we maintain or insist 60% land utilization. That means that your total land area can only have concrete footprints of 60%. The remainder of the 40% must be dedicated to greenery, to some gardening or to some flowers and horticulture, activities in the neighborhood. Now, why choose Appolonia City? And we shall be bringing the discussions to a close gradually. Choose Appolonia City because of its strong parentage. I have mentioned in the presentation that Appolonia City is being done by a company of international repute known as Rendeavor. Rendeavor and its shareholding structure is one that cannot be questioned. Our shareholders are drawn from many countries. Our biggest shareholder and CEO is a gentleman by name Stephen Jennings, who is an astute investment banker, hails from New Zealand. We have Frank Misset. Frank Misset is an American investor who was very recently appointed to the American body that advises the government on investments in Africa. We also have, very many reputable individuals on our shareholding, and these people cannot fail or disappoint the clients they've done transactions in. Like I have mentioned earlier, we have 7 sister cities in 5 African countries, and so we are not one of your regular real estate companies who would come and leave. We are here to stay. There is also community shareholding. I explained earlier in the beginning that Appolonia City is so called because it is a partnership between Rendeavor and the chiefs and the people of Appolonia community. And so for these reasons, we cannot fail. There's an approved master plan which is being implemented. I mentioned earlier that the master plan was developed by a firm known as SOM. This master plan has been presented to the Home Katamanso Municipal Authority and has been approved. And so it gives you the assurance that the master plan was not just developed haphazardly. It had a lot of thinking go into it, and that has been approved by the municipal authority. What that also means for you, our clients, is that because the different land use types have been approved by the KKME, when you buy land from Appolonia City, getting your statutory permits to start your projects is easier. And indeed, we have a good working relationship with the KKME. And so we even support our clients in the acquisition of their statutory requirements. And there's state-of-the-art infrastructure. For those of you who have been to Appolonia, you would attest to the fact. We have tarred roads with covered U drains for stormwater. We have water and power infrastructure, and we have ICT infrastructure, what we call fiber to the home, to support life within the city and improve the quality of life. Why choose Appolonia City? Again, because of the clean land title that Appolonia holds. We very recently had a client come to Appolonia City who had been directed from the survey department, lands commission. He had made an investment in buying land in another part of town. However, it was fraught with litigation. And a staff of land commission told him, if you want litigation-free land, you better go to Appolonia City. And that is testament to the fact that our land title is clean, it is litigation-free, and you will not have the problems other landowners face with land guards. There are no such issues within Appolonia City. Our unexpired lease term, I think one of our webinars, the very first one, if I am correct, we spoke about buying land and what considerations to make when you buy land. And one of the key things my colleague pointed out was the fact that you must pay attention to the unexpired lease term. For us in Appolonia City, and it is unrivaled, if you ask me, we have a very lengthy or extended unexpired lease term. For residential enclaves, we offer 80 years leasehold period. And for industrial parks, we do 75 years. For those of you who are into industrial real estate, you would attest to the fact that what you commonly find, what our rivals would offer you is usually 50 years, but we give you 150% more. And so we give you 75 years of lease for the land in industrial parks. Availability of different offerings. this will speak to a question that was asked earlier. Within Appolonia City, we have quite a number of options. There's a choice between different plot sizes. You can, as an individual, buy a single plot for your own development. However, if you want to do bulk residential housing, you may also buy bulk land to put up an estate of your choice. So if you come within Appolonia City now, you'll find that individuals are putting up buildings according to their taste and their likeness. And so they are putting up bespoke buildings. But these bespoke buildings would have to be approved by the development control guidelines. There are other real estate developers, smaller real estate developers, who have bought large tracts of land within Appolonia City and are putting up housing for sale. An example of which is Pinnacle Realty, which is putting up some 12 units a townhouse development within Appolonia. There's also the Barton Townhomes, where we are doing 4-bedroom townhouses in a 33 unit gated community within Appolonia City. They are the likes of Ghana Home Loans that is doing an affordable housing project within Appolonia City. And so they too have bought a large tract of land and are doing affordable housing for sale by themselves. There is also what is known as the Oxford. The Oxford is where Appolonia City has partnered Imperial Homes to put up built units for middle income earners. And so for an individual, there's a choice of buying an already built unit or buying a plot of land to put up a building to your own specification and taste. And so there are units, and these already built units, cover a wide income spectrum. There's also, bulk land for different land uses. There's social land, there's local business, there's mixed business, there's an industrial park, and there is the central business district. And so there are many very varied offerings within Appolonia City for one to choose from. And so to answer the question, yes, you are able to build your own building. You do not necessarily have to put up any of the designs that are already existing within Appolonia. All you have to do is to buy a size of land according to your taste and put up a design. But that design would have to be approved by the Development Control Committee of Appolonia City. Why choose Appolonia? Our state-of-the-art infrastructure, reliable power and water. As far as water and utilities are concerned, residents within Appolonia will attest to the fact that we have more reliability of power and water due to the heavy investments we've made in the provision of utility infrastructure. If you come to Appolonia City now, you'll find that we have put up a dedicated 33 kV power substation where we buy power in bulk from ECG. What that means is that we have better quality of power, we have more reliable power, and we do not experience outages as you would rather have in other parts of Accra. This is because statistics and studies have shown that 80% of the outages we suffer as a people is due to the obsolete and undersized equipment in ECG's distribution network, and that has been taken care of by the fact that we are not low voltage customers of ECG. We are bulk customers of ECG. We have done a similar thing for water too. We have a dedicated 160 mm pipeline from Poon, which supplies water to Appolonia City, and so there's reliability of both power and water. We are also deploying fiber to the home, what is known as FTTH, which will bring high-speed internet connectivity to the doorstep of our clients and our residents within Appolonia City. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking time off your busy schedules to join me for this webinar. I shall take the rest of the questions and we will sign off properly after. Matthew, over to you.
All right, thank you, Ben, for those insightful points in your slides. Let's go through some of the questions. Kenneth says, how is Appolonia City going to fund the management of the city over time, especially after all the lands have been developed? I asked this question because even the master plan communities in Ghana eventually grow uncontrollably because the authorities lack resources to manage it.
Thank you very much for the question. one of the duties of the management company or the MANCO that has been set up by Appolonia City is to come up with relevant service charges which will be paid by residents within Appolonia City. These service charges are to help the management company offer urban services to residents. Urban services, we mean maintenance of common areas, we mean disposal of waste and refuse, we mean sewer networks and treatment of sewage that come from residents. A part of the service charge will be dedicated to the maintenance and replacement of the infrastructure within Appolonia City. And so that component of the service charge will be kept in an escrow account for the regular and periodic maintenance of the infrastructure within Appolonia City. And that is how we seek to raise some funds for the management company to manage its affairs. And need I say, there would be transparency in the way these service charges are used, because like I said earlier on, there will be representations of the property owners associations and landowners associations within, sitting on the management company and making the day-to-day decisions. And so it will not be a group of, staff of Appolonia dictating to you how the resources are used.
Okay. Kobina says, I hope you touch on your current land rate.
Kobina, if you please speak with our salespersons. Anybody who is on the webinar will be contacted by our marketing and sales department to speak with you as to how we can take this conversation further, and they would give you all the information that you may so require.
Exactly. And additionally, if you click the files icon, you would see that we have put some documents in there. I think one of them is our price list, so you can have access to all of that. Then when you click on Office, you would give a quick connection to us, and we can answer all your questions there. Edem Danjo says, good point on the land utilization ratio, a good way to avoid flooding. Then finally, Patricia Adu says, how long does one have to put up a building from the time of land acquisition?
Right. Thank you very much, Patricia. There is a 5-year development timeline for anybody who does, a transaction within Appolonia City. I think we have, and I know for a fact that we have a 2-year payment plan, if such is your choice. After the 2-year payment plan, then you are left with 3 years to start construction on your land. If for whatever reason you are unable to start within the 5-year construction timelines we give our clients, Appolonia City will not revoke your ownership of the land. What we would do rather is to reserve the right to relocate you to a part of the development that would be developed later. Because we want to avoid the situation where people are living in built-up areas and you have construction going on all around them and all the inconveniences that come with it. And so the development timeline is not to force you to do construction within the 5 years, even though we will strongly encourage that. If you do not lose rights and claim to your land. We will just rather reserve the rights to relocate your parcel, to a place that is earmarked for development in later times.
Okay. All right. Then a final comment here from Ifua Opon. She says, I think your presentation was well structured and straight to the point. Good job. Thank you very much, Ifua. Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. Kobina Apiache says, thank you very much. Educative. All right. So Ben, let's take your final comment. Try and summarize everything in 1 minute or 2 minutes.
Right. I think that it is my hope that this webinar has shed some light on the importance of master plan communities. And so we are all going to make a conscious effort to situate real estate investments within master plan communities. And if you are thinking of making any investments in real estate, I want to encourage you strongly to choose Appolonia City. What we have proven over over the course of time and through these webinars is that we have the knowledge and the know-how to bring up a city development of this scale. We have made the right investments to provide the infrastructure that will make your life comfortable within Appolonia City. And there are very many offerings, like I have said earlier in the presentation. And there's something available for every pocket. Trust me, there's something available for every pocket. We have quite flexible payment terms, and so I would ask you not to be scared by the prices you may see, but speak with an REA, speak with a salesperson. Let's see how we can meet you in the middle and help you be a part of this great project being undertaken by Ghanaians within Ghana for Ghanaians. And those in the diaspora, you're welcome to also invest in Appolonia City. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Ben. Thank you. Or before you go, Ben, we've been talking about Appolonia City, but it's good to give you a fair idea what the city looks like. So I'm going to play a video for you to see. It's a snapshot of Appolonia City, and I'm sure that would wrap up our conversation this morning. So after the video, we are done. My name is Matthew Ansa, and Ben Adamu Mahmood was Adamu Ben Mahmood was our facilitator, our special guest for today. Thank you for joining the webinar.
Living your dream has never been more real. Where every day is an escape from the hustle of the city to your own little paradise at Appolonia City. With development of a light industrial park covering the 200 acres of land and state-of-the-art infrastructure, some companies are already setting up. With over 100 acres also available for schools, shopping centers, parks and recreational activities, you can be sure that you're joining a dream community. So get a plot that suits you today. Be it commercial, social, residential or light industrial, because your dream is only a phone call away. Give Appolonia City a call today to be part of Accra's new city. We can't wait to welcome you.
We can't wait to welcome you.
All right. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend and catch you on our next one.
Matthew, sorry, before you go, Patricia asked the question and I think she lost connection and so missed the answer. She asked how long you had to develop your land if you made an acquisition within Appolonia City. I mentioned that it was 5 years, 5 years taking into consideration the 2-year payment period within which you can pay for the land and 3 years to start construction and finish it. However, if you're unable to build within the 5 years, what Appolonia reserves the right to is not a right of revocation of your ownership. We would only relocate you to a part of the development that would be developed later. Thank you very much. I needed to put that in, chip that in for Patricia's benefit. Thank you.
Okay, great. Interestingly, a few have come. Let me just go through them. Kwabna Kwartin says, good presentation. There are still some questions to ask later as they come up. Awesome. I mean, since we'll still be engaging you. Selassie Seboafo says, great presentation, Ben, very in-depth and filled with knowledge. Frank Spencer says, thank you, Adamu. Then Nana Fianco Cranton says, very insightful, thank you. Desmond says, great presentation, Ben. Patricia says, thank you. All right, so guys, Stephen Anak says, awesome presentation. I'm sure more comments are coming in. Yes, so it's been great. Thank you all very much. Please be on standby for the next announcement regarding our next webinar. I'm sure it's going to be very, very exciting. Now that you know that it's imperative for you to be in the master plan city, maybe we'll be delving deeper into what you can do to build your home, maybe your first home or your vacation home. Enjoy the weekend. Thank you very much.